Well, some of the things we do every day, and we lately we've been doing a lot of food transportation to the students that are quarantining. Um, we do, you know, one of our officers now, Sergeant Dawson, is assigned to judicial, so he's up there every single day, Monday through Friday, handling um, judicial complaints with students. I think we deal with, noise complaints. We deal with one of the things that's pretty common is motor vehicle lockouts. I was doing one before I came to this meeting. Um, we do deal with students who are locked out, lost their keys. And until the pandemic hit, we were doing a lot of um, transportation of students that need a ride to a doctor's office, need a ride to go get a prescription, need a ride across campus because they live in Pemi and their classes are all in Hyde and they're on crutches. So it's one of the things we've always done is kind of transported students like that. And, on the weekends and night times, it's different. I don't work nights anymore. I'm fortunate enough that I've spent enough time doing nights and midnights throughout my career that I'm in a position where I work Monday through Friday, pretty much days, which means I work 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. But the evening shifts deal with noise complaints. And then, of course, drug and alcohol calls are multiple times a week in most of the dorms and around. And again, backing up Plymouth usually for breaking up parties on the weekends. Fortunately, lately we haven't been doing that in our situation we're in now, but that's one of the most common things we deal with on a normal basis is assisting Plymouth breaking up parties, moving people along, making sure they don't go from one house to the next or gather in the street and create more of a problem.
Can I appeal my parking ticket?
You can appeal your parking ticket. If you got a parking ticket, you can turn it over and look at the website on the back and go to the My Permit, I think it's My Permit store, and there's instructions at the back of the ticket to appeal it. It'll come to my desk or it'll come to Officer Hutchins' desk. We do all the appeals.
All right, then. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I actually have another question.
Sure.
I'm going for criminal justice and I'm looking to be a cop as well. Where do you start? Like, where did you start to become a cop?
Well, I'll go back to, many, many years ago. I actually attended college for culinary arts, believe it or not. I cooked all through high school for 4 years on the weekends, in and around my sports schedule. And then I tried to go in the military and I couldn't get in the military because of my allergy. So I had nothing to do. I was like, I'm not going in there. I guess I'm going to school. And I got a scholarship offer to go to, well, it's now Southern New Hampshire University, but back then it was New Hampshire College. I went there for a year and I couldn't stand it. I didn't want to be in school. I didn't like it. I didn't want to be there, went into the working business. And then a few years later, 4 or 5 years later, I started thinking I really want to get into law enforcement. And so I just kept being persistent. And, I'd fill out job applications against students like yourself who, in 4 years will have a degree. And so I was going up against people with degrees and I didn't really have much of a chance. It took me a long time to break in, several years. And I finally got in part-time with a local agency, got hired by them, went through, started working shifts, realized it was something that I really wanted to do. And then really put full effort into getting hired full-time by an agency and then going to the full-time academy and coming out. And, it's one of the things, but I will say this to you. Getting your degree, whether it's in criminal justice, business, or whatever it may be in, is something that will serve you well the rest of your life. It was a regret I had for a long time not having my degree. 3.5 years ago, I did graduate. I went back to school and I went to Granite State College, did most of my classes online. After being passed over for several promotions throughout my career because I didn't have that degree. I finally went back to school and it was pretty intimidating, walking into a classroom at 45 years old, thinking that all these kids that are going to be there are going to be 18 and 19 and having kids older than most of those students, I thought. But I actually went into Granite State College with a good mix of people that were there. I wasn't even the oldest person in the class at the time. So going back and getting my degree it's been a big thing for me. It showed my kids that you're never too old to learn, and something I kind of crossed off the bucket list. I always wanted to do, and so my suggestion to you is stay persistent because it's it's a tough business to be in, especially these days. The way police have been perceived around the country these days, it's been really tough for us. We've taken a pretty big black eye in the last 6 or 7 months, and I guess a lot of it is probably our own detriment that we've done it to ourselves. We don't need to discuss all that, but I would say stay consistent, stay persistent, and if you can, I would say probably maybe after your sophomore year, even your junior year, look to get on maybe a local agency at home, even if you get on part-time as a special, so you can kind of get a feel of what it's like. Um, it's one of those things you can do. We normally have, I don't know, 6 or 7 students, or maybe even more than that work for us throughout the year that help us out. But we don't have any student workers anymore. So, but it's one of those, just stay persistent at it, because it's a tough business to break into and crack into. But if you have your degree in 4 years, then that's going to be a big plus. And a lot of states have what they call civil service, so that you need to have a degree to apply anyways, whether it be a 2-year degree or 4-year degree. The only other thing I could suggest is law enforcement agencies love to see somebody with a military background.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. How would you describe Plymouth as a community? Since you said you grew up here.
Well, I mean, I think as a community, I think it's a pretty close knit community. It's not a huge community. It's not a city. I think the population is somewhere around between 5 and 6,000 people. And of course, then you add the students to it, another 3,800 students every year. But we're a destination, because we're the university, we're a destination community in the sense that a lot of people, several hundred people a day, come here to work, obviously for the university, but the other businesses that are in town. And I remind people that if Plymouth State wasn't here, Plymouth wouldn't be here. We'd be a gas station stop on a map. There'd be nothing out on Tenny Mountain Highway. There'd be no businesses out there, because again, your D&M building used to be a manufacturing building. If you head out Highland Street and head out towards Hannaford's and that way, go past the high school and down on the right, I think it's a secondhand store, a thrift store down there, recycle store on the right. That used to be Hitchner Manufacturing, and that employed hundreds of people. So there's a lot of manufacturing in here and in this community, and it's not here anymore. We are a college community, and I think if you asked any business owner in town, they'll let you know how bad they were hurt this spring when there was no students here. And so I think it's basically the same thing I used to tell people in Lincoln when, if people in Plymouth complain about the university, I say, well, listen, if the university is not here, you have nothing. It's the same thing I used to tell people when I worked in Lincoln, when the locals would complain about Loon Mountain. I'd say the same thing. Well, I said, well, the skier is not here. There's no Lincoln here, because Lincoln was a mill town. That mill closed in 1974, 75, it closed. Loon Mountain was there, but it wasn't near as big as it is now. And if Loon Mountain, this ski area, is not there, then people are just driving over the Kank to go to Conway. And they're not getting off exit 32. They're going to go north. So, I mean, I think it's kind of probably the same in most communities. I mean, we live in a state that revolves around tourism, summer tourism, winter tourism, whether it be snowmobiling or skiing. So, we're not a manufacturing. We don't, not this far north. We're not, anyways.
Any other questions that you would like to ask?
I have another question.
Mhm.
When you come across intoxicated kids, what goes through your mind, and how does that situation usually go?
Well, I think the first thing that comes across the mind is their safety. Let's make sure we get them to a place where they're safe, whether it be with roommates, whether it be with friends, whatever it may be. I tell people all the time, listen, we know what you guys do. You're 18, 19, we can't give you permission to drink, but we know what students do. I've always said this, I wish there was one way to get kids to just take that much time to think before they did something, and we could probably avoid a lot of situations. But again, especially with the freshman class, they come in and they just want to kind of go all out and just really get that experience. And again, I think the Plymouth State community is better for our police department, for having the police department we do. because again, we all got so many years of experience, and it does nothing really shocks us or nothing bothers us. I mean, it doesn't bother me when, I just, again, my concern is that they're not going to, somebody's going to be so intoxicated they pass out and fall in the bushes and nobody finds them till the next day and they get exposure, or something happens to them or they get hurt. That's the biggest thing for me, and I think for most of us officers, is making sure you're safe. Most of those times result in, 10 years ago, would resulted in intoxicated kids would have probably been taken up to Plymouth PD, held in a holding cell until they're sober, and then you leave with paperwork the next day with going to court. And the majority of the time, that doesn't happen anymore. And we still do it. I tell students all the time, I'm a friendly, easygoing guy, but if you put me in a position to have to do my job, I'll do my job. And it's just that's just the way it goes. And even as friendly as I am with a lot of students on campus that I know, especially some of the teams that I've been around, the hockey teams, certainly the soccer team with my daughter and stuff, I know all those kids very well. And I've even told the girls on the soccer team, like, you make a mistake and put me in a position to have to do my job, I'll do it. And I'm not going to take the liability for myself or put the university in a compromised position where they could be liable for something because I'm careless. Hope that answers your question. But again, we try not to take too many kids to court if we can help it. We like to deal with them on campus.
Thank you.
Yep.
I have a question about like the parking ticket thing. How long do we have to park like at our hall until we get a ticket? Like what's like the time frame for like dropping off groceries or something?
So what we tell kids is, we try and tell you that we call it 20 minutes. Realistically, it's probably half an hour you're going to get. But when you park, if you're going to unload groceries or come home from a weekend home and, bring your laundry back in and your groceries, whatever you're bringing back, we ask you to spend no more than 20 minutes, a half an hour. Just put your four-way flashes on so we know that you're there temporary. And if we have to come jumpstart you the next day and we jumpstart your car and your flashes come on, we know you left your car there overnight. So it's happened quite a bit, but usually 20 minutes to a half an hour. That's all, and I say it's faculty staff, but we get complaints about students parking in faculty lots all the time. And, I think people get upset and think that there's not enough parking on campus. We all agree with that. You won't find anybody that doesn't agree with there's not enough campus parking for everybody. But we're also unique in the university that not many schools across this country, I think the percentage is around 80%, don't allow freshmen or first year students to even bring a car to campus. And the University of New Hampshire down in Durham doesn't even allow you, if you're a transfer student, to bring a car in. If you're a freshman or first year student to UNH, you don't get to have a car on campus. And I'm not sure what Keene does if they allow freshmen or not, but that's one of our marketing things that we have for our marketing departments, that we allow students to come in because we are a rural campus in northern New Hampshire. So it's not like we're in the city and you can get mass transit everywhere. So that's one of those things that, we just think students are fortunate enough to have. I mean, you'll hear the griping about people not, having to park at the ice arena to walk back to campus, but the other alternative is we don't let freshmen bring cars, and I don't think that's a good idea.
Thank you.
I have a question. As you know, this is a writing class, a composition class, and we read an article that is called The Art of the Police Report. Now, I would like to ask you, what do you know now that you didn't know when you started it as a police officer about writing? What do you know now that you didn't know then about writing a police report in terms
Details.
of the writing?
Yeah, I would say certainly details. You start off, and in our business they call it taming the paper tiger, because everybody sees on TV how exciting police shows are, and people are foot pursuits and shootouts and car chases. That's about maybe 1% of the time, if you're lucky, it's that exciting. 75% of what we do is paperwork. We have to justify ourselves and our existence to not only our superiors but also to our agencies, or in this case the university, and everything's got to be documented. So I think learning the right way to document an incident, and by that I mean making sure you get the right right information. And one report is different than the next report. And I think probably one of the misnomers in our business is that eyewitnesses are great accounts. They're really not. Everybody that's sitting in this class right now could see an event and they're going to see it different. You have somebody walk through here. One witness is going to say, "Well, they're really tall. They look like they were 6'5". The person's going to go, "No, they were. I'm 5'8". They were shorter than me. They had a blue shirt. No, that was a black shirt." I mean, it's all those different eyewitness accounts. So learning to be detail oriented when it comes to writing reports makes a big difference. It certainly saves you in the end when it comes time if you have a case that ends up going to court where if you don't have the details, it can make you look foolish and you can lose a case that way.
Yeah, I love the fact that you said that you talked about perspective, that each one of us has a different perspective on anything. The same thing when we write, we all have a unique perspective as how we see life. And that's where we focus and pay attention to, depending on what our experience is being like in life.
Right. And I think for you, Professor, you teaching a composition class and another professor teaching a composition class and your students taking one from you and one from another professor, how you look at your writing style and the way you like to see a paper written is different than another professor. And that's no different than when I was a supervisor for 14 years reviewing all the reports. I correct the reports for grammatical errors and spelling mistakes and things of that. I never asked an officer to put anything in their report to add content to it. You don't do, that's not something you can do. You can't change the integrity of the report. An officer saw the event, how they saw the event. You have to just make sure that what they're doing is they're writing it in a way that conveys it to the reader and what they saw. Because law enforcement's unique. And I'll tell you this, law enforcement is one of those situations where they give you the test first and you get the lesson plan later. And that's a tough thing because you go out, you can be as trained as you want, and at 2 o'clock in the morning, you get called to go in there and handle a situation and make a split-second decision. Literally, it could be a life and death decision at 2 o'clock in the morning. And then for the next 6 months or a year, your supervisors, your chief, your prosecutors, your county attorneys, and judges and lawyers get to sit there and pick that apart. So if you don't get it right the first time when you document your reports, it makes it look like, oh, I got to add that. Well, why did you add that the first time? Well, I forgot about it. That calls into question your integrity. And once you lose your integrity as a police officer, you're done. And I never tried to change anybody's report. I would look at them and I might question an officer and say, "Is that all you saw that night?" "Well, I know I saw this, this, and this." And I'd look at them and say, "Well, do you think that's important? It should be in a report. It's a detail." "Yeah, it probably should be." Probably should be in your report then if you feel that strongly about it. But never trying to change anybody's stuff. Just look at it, and I call it the red pen. I'd send it back to him and say, "Hey, this doesn't make any sense." As you know, Professor, and probably all of you students know this too, you write a paper, and it could be a 2-page paper or a 3-page paper. You write that paper, and you could read it 15 times in a row, and it sounds right to you. And somebody else reads it and looks at you and goes, "What were you writing? What is that? That makes no sense at all." But in your mind, you've been in that paper and been involved in that for an hour or 2 hours of that. And it's the same thing. And I used to tell, and I still tell young officers this day, when you type on something that is extremely important as an arrest warrant or a search warrant, have another set of eyes look at it. Because the judge is going to look at that, and you don't want to make yourself look foolish in front of the judge going, "Does this guy even have any idea how to structure a sentence?" And again, you write it, it looks normal to you, but have somebody else put eyes on it so it actually looks, that's probably a great lesson for you students too, is have your roommate take a look at it and read through a paper. If it's a really important paper you're submitting at the end of a semester or something, and have somebody look at it and correct it for you. It will make a difference. You'll be surprised. And then when they correct it, you look at it and go, "Oh yeah, I guess that makes more sense this way."
Thank you. We have one more question before we one more question.
I'll ask a question.
Mm-hmm.
How is the relationship between the Plymouth Police and the University Police?
We have a very good relationship with them. We work with them hand in hand on a lot of stuff. We do actually cross-train together. We use Plymouth Police Department's facility up there. If we process somebody, or even a lot of your classes, especially your childhood education, your teaching classes, they have to get fingerprinted to go off and do their student teaching. So we fingerprint a lot of students that way. But The chief of police and I broke into law enforcement almost at the exact same time, the chief of Plymouth. So I've known Chief LaFave now for 27, 28 years. Um, the deputy chief in Plymouth, Officer Hutchins, I trained him when he was a part-time, he was a part-time officer in Woodstock many years ago, going back 20 years. So, it's like anything else, it's not a revolving door, but police officers come and go and they move closer to home or find a different agency they want to work for. So, um, again, I think what really bodes well for the University Police Department is just our experience. You can't pay for that experience to have all of that on campus. Like I said, nothing comes as a surprise for us anymore. And you're not a young officer. And again, we don't go out and do active motor vehicle work unless somebody does something really egregious in front of us. I think I've been here almost 5 years now. I think I've stopped one car and that was it. And, um, we just don't do that. That's not something our chief wants us involved in. We want to concentrate on campus here, but we have a really good working relationship with them. Plymouth needs it too, and at the end of the day, if you got a midnight officer on for Plymouth PD at 3 o'clock in the morning, they get called to an alarm, there's nobody else working with Plymouth PD, and hit or miss whether you have a trooper in the area that could help you. So we get called a lot to help them and back them up, and we have to have a good relationship with them. We don't want to have an adversarial relationship by any means. And it's the same with Holderness. We go over and slide over to back up Holderness. We want to have a good relationship with them too. So
Well, thank you very much, Officer Mayer, for coming to my class. I always grateful that you make the time to come and talk to us. If there's anything else you would like to add before we let you go.
well, this is what I would add, Professor. First of all, I appreciate you inviting me in because I think it's important that the students get to see the officers that in real life situations, and this is a real life situation. Now we're in Zoom, otherwise we'd be in class, obviously. Um, but to know that we're human beings, we're not just uniforms and robots. We have families. Nobody's nobody here doesn't have the problems everybody else has. It family problems. It doesn't make any difference who you are. And I think a lot of people have that misnomer about police officers that we're impervious to everything. We're not. We are the same people that you are, and same as your mom and dad. And we really kind of try and be your parents, so to speak, if you will. But I would like to say this to all the students here. Feel free to stop by and say hi anytime. If you have any questions, you can stop by. Everybody here is very helpful and always helpful and willing to answer your questions to help out with any issue it may be. Um, and just say hi. You can say hi. You see us, we're all friendly. Everybody here wants to say hi and talk to you. And I understand social distancing and stuff like that. But let me end it on this. I thank you students for all you've been doing for the university this semester and doing your job and keeping up with the social distancing and the mask wearing is, whether depending on what size, it doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on, whether you believe in masks or don't believe in masks. It's an important thing for everybody to do this so we can stay here in our in-class or learning, even though you're Zoom class here, but you're still on campus. So we want to stay on campus. We want to stay here. And I think the students and you guys are to be commended for the job you've been doing so far. I mean, you've done a really nice job, and it's not easy. It's not easy being your first semester away from home. You want to be able to go out and have a good time, but I think you've done a really good job, and hopefully we keep it up and we stay open right through this semester, and we get to come back for the second semester. You guys will really like it up here in the wintertime. It may be cold, but if you're a skier or snowboarder, you're in the right area.